October 16th, 1951. Rawalpindi, Pakistan. Liaquat Ali Khan, Pakistan's first prime minister, begins addressing a massive crowd of over 100,000 people. Yet, what could have been the most important speech of his life is cut short. Before he even begins, 2 shots ring out from the crowd and hit the prime minister right in the chest. As he collapses on stage in a pool of his own blood, he utters, "God shall protect Pakistan."
Welcome to Season 1 of TimeGhost Cold War coverage in our series War to War, where we follow the wars that wouldn't end within a Cold War, the beginning of the digital age, the atomic age, and the space age. I'm Anna Deinhard.
And I am Sebastian Brandstetter. Ali Khan's assassination changes the course of history in South Asia rapidly and abruptly. Before his death, he had been on the verge of changing Pakistan's foreign policy, reinvigorating the Muslim League, the dominant political force that led to the movement for Pakistan's creation, and addressing the Kashmir situation, just to name 3 of his main goals.
So, we have a murder on our hands, and identifying the killer might give us a deeper understanding of what exactly Ali Khan planned that led to his assassination. There are suspects aplenty: India, Pakistan's national enemy, or foreign powers interested in the region, like the United States or even the recently departed colonial overlords, the British.
But there are also other, perhaps lesser-known possibilities. Khan could have been killed because of the situation in Afghanistan, or in Kashmir, the heavily disputed Himalayan state that had already sparked the first war between India and Pakistan in October 1947, barely 2 months after the British had withdrawn from the region.
To know more about how, why, and when the Brits relinquished the crown jewel of their empire and why India and Pakistan started on a war path right from the get-go, check out our video about it right here on the TimeGhost channel.
Like any decent investigators, we should start with the easiest lead, the killer. His name is Saeed Akbar, an Afghan national. Unfortunately for us and the killer, we cannot count on any testimony since Akbar is shot dead immediately after.
But luckily, the Pakistani authorities already have him on file. So, here's what we know.
Akbar had been a British intelligence agent in the pre-independence period. At the time, he was on the payroll of Pakistani intelligence and under the strictest of surveillance.
So, right from the get-go, we are presented with an assassin who has, or at least had, connections to intelligence agencies from the UK and currently works within Pakistani intelligence. Additionally, he is under strict surveillance, raising questions about how he was able to get within roughly 5.5 meters of the Prime Minister, especially given that...
As early as February 1950, Pakistani intelligence filed a report on a planned attempt on Liaquat's life. Orders were issued that no suspicious characters be allowed within 30 to 40 yards of the Prime Minister.
Rather than answer questions, the killer and what we know of him have raised more. So, let's begin by pursuing other leads. First, the killer is Afghan. This matters a whole deal more than you might imagine. Let's break it down.
The Durand Line is a line drawn on a map in 1893. Back then, Amir Abdul Rahman, the ruler of Afghanistan, and Sir Mortimer Durand, the foreign secretary of the Indian government, agreed on a demarcation line between the British and Afghan spheres of influence.
By the end of the 19th century, British colonial expansion in the region pushed towards Afghanistan. This is all part of the Great Game, the imperial competition between Britain and Tsarist Russia in Central and South Asia.
Britain's goal was to turn Afghanistan into a reliable buffer state. So far, so good. However, there is one big problem with the Durand Line. It does not represent a geographic border, but rather a pencil line drawn arbitrarily on a map.
That means it cuts right through communities, leaving some tribes suddenly finding themselves split across 2 nations. Because of that, until 1947, the Brits kept their border porous on purpose, allowing tribesmen and women to cross easily.
However, after Britain's departure, Afghanistan stops recognizing the line. As in almost every other part of the region, Kabul, the country's capital, has its own post-colonial nation-building project. There, the Pashtun ruling elite now stresses a Pashtunized national identity.
In other words, Kabul believes that parts of what is currently Pakistan shouldn't really be part of Pakistan. This also explains why Afghanistan was the only UN member state that opposed a Pakistan admission back in 1947. What Kabul wants and tries to achieve with the Pashtunistan movement is an autonomous Pashtun state.
For the Afghan royal family, the land across the Durand Line presented the opportunity for expanded influence among the largely Pashtun population, who shared ethnic, cultural, and religious roots with much of Afghanistan's own people.
Suffice it to say, Pakistan and crucially Ali Khan disagree vehemently. For them, the territorial integrity of the young Pakistan state is an unmovable fact.
However, Kabul isn't just talking, it's acting. As Afghan officials fan the flames of rebellion, armed tribal forces launched dozens of raids across the border, clashing with the Pakistani military right up to the month of the assassination. In 1951 alone, Pakistani officials count 58 raids. In response, Pakistan, under Ali Khan, imposes sanctions on Afghanistan. This all gives us plenty of motive. Yet, there are still details that do not add up.
The killer was killed instantly by the police. These are clues of the highest value. The assassin's national origin led to the immediate conclusion of an Afghan or an Indian hand.
So maybe someone saw the Afghan nationality of the killer as an easy way out, a possibility to allay suspicion and point towards the immediately obvious answer. The plot thickens.
But let's not discount these possibilities just yet. As we have just seen, there's another faction that is immediately suspected: India. In a previous video, we already talked plenty about the First Indian-Pakistani War.
The short version is that on January 1st, 1949, a ceasefire is signed between the two warring states. India and Pakistan essentially went to war over the province of Jammu and Kashmir because its Hindu ruler chose to join India in exchange for military help to repel an invasion by Pakistani-backed Muslim forces, a decision Pakistan rejects due to the state's Muslim majority population.
After the ceasefire on January 5th, the United Nations decides on the fate of Kashmir.
The final disposition of the state of Jammu and Kashmir will be made through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite.
However, this referendum never comes. One reason is that Pakistan doesn't completely withdraw its forces from the region. According to India, this is a condition for the referendum. There is a reason Pakistan doesn't do this, though.
Pakistan could not agree to the resolution's requirement that it first withdraw its forces from Jammu and Kashmir, then allow India, which also was to withdraw the bulk of its forces, to move minimal forces into the vacated areas to maintain law and order while the UN conducted the plebiscite.
The fear is clear. If Pakistan withdrew its forces, who's to say India wouldn't manipulate the polls? Then there is also the fact that, as time passes, India no longer genuinely wants a referendum.
This is because very quickly after 1947, India starts to believe that should the free referendum be held, Pakistan would win, since the majority of the Kashmiri population is Muslim, not Hindu. Yet India does not admit this.
While it maintains a facade of believing in a UN referendum, it begins to quietly integrate parts of the region into India. Specifically, India pressures Maharaja Hari Singh to release Sheikh Abdullah from prison.
He's New Delhi's man in Kashmir, and a major prize, a popular Muslim leader who chose secular India over Pakistan. Backed by his friend, Indian Prime Minister Nehru, Abdullah is empowered to sideline rivals, win over the population with land reforms, and ultimately create a new assembly in 1951 to make Kashmir's union with India a political fact.
Now, as you might expect, Pakistan and Ali Khan are not enthused by this at all. Since the ceasefire, both India and Pakistan have maintained sizable concentrations of forces along the ceasefire line.
The two countries appeared on the brink of war in July 1951. During this period, Khan makes celebrated public displays of defiance, for instance in Karachi, and makes clear that on his watch, Jammu and Kashmir would not go to India uncontested.
So, if Khan were to disappear during this crucial time, there would be sizable advantages for India. His death would, and does, rupture the already fragile Pakistani government, rendering it weak and distracted. From the position of Pakistan's enemy number one. A win-win.
In the meantime, India could further establish control in Jammu and Kashmir. All this together gives us crystal clear motive.
Yet, something doesn't feel quite right. If you remember, the assassin Said Akbar had ties to both British and Pakistani intelligence. Thus, if India and/or Afghanistan were responsible, a problematic picture emerges.
That would imply an infiltration of Pakistani intelligence by the state's two principal enemies, a difficult proposition to sustain.
Difficult, but not impossible. Improbable, nevertheless. Dead end? Maybe. It's too soon to say. And in the meantime, let's move on historically and methodically. I'm thinking ties to British intelligence?
That's what I was thinking too. After all, a colonial power exerting continued influence over a former colony does not strike me as a crazy proposition. But what skin do the British have in the game?
In 1951, Britain, the empire on which the sun never sets, has long passed its zenith, its superpower status fading fast. That does not mean, however, that Britain has no interest in South Asia.
Like in 1893, when the Durand Line was first drawn, the area, specifically the borderlands between Pakistan and Afghanistan, is seen in London as a vital buffer of expansion, this time not of the Tsar and the Russian Empire, but of the Soviet Union.
To combat Soviet influence and safeguard its remaining colonial empire, Britain banks on Commonwealth defense. While Pakistan and India may be colonies no longer, they are both part of the Commonwealth, the voluntary association of independent nations linked by common history and, Britain hopes, a common defense policy.
In their Commonwealth defense plan, London envisages both India and Pakistan maintaining sizable armies to contest the Soviets if need be. So Britain decides it is in its interest to keep both Pakistan and India strong and armed, delivering weapons to both. Although the Jammu and Kashmir conflict essentially means that as long as it remains unresolved, neither party will play along with the British plan.
One core aim of this whole thing is to protect the British-owned oil fields in Iran. If you want to learn about Iran during this time and the British oil interests in the region, depending on when you watch this, there's a video on the channel specifically about that.
In short, in 1951, there's the Anglo-Iranian oil dispute. It gives Britain a proper headache and is a significant blow to its economic interests. The dispute is part of a wider nationalist movement sweeping through the Middle East.
Many former colonies or states effectively exploited by the British, such as Iran, rebel against British stewardship.
Britain hopes Pakistan, being a Muslim state, could diffuse the situation in a favorable way, for Britain at least. Yet Prime Minister Khan does exactly the opposite.
The former supporter of Pakistan as the guardian of the right flank of the Western powers against communism now does a 180. Khan is fed up with the West and its failure to resolve the Kashmir conflict, even speaking of a double cross. He is tired of India being favored, so he does something very bold.
In early October, Khan instructs Pakistan's ambassador to Iran to discuss the possibility of a joint Pakistan-Iran-Egyptian policy on the Middle East.
Okay, very brief context. Egypt has just reneged on an important 1936 treaty that granted Britain control over the Suez Canal. This is the first sign of the coming Suez crisis, about which we have a video. Also, right here on this channel, damn, we have a lot of fucking videos.
On October 12th, 4 days before his death, Khan goes even further. In discussions with the American ambassador Warren, when discussing Middle East defense, the Pakistani Prime Minister is cagey and reluctant to commit. Instead, he continuously brings up Kashmir.
And then we come to the speech Khan never got the chance to make. While he had no notes prepared, his wife said it would have been the most important speech of his life, likely because of precisely this. An abandonment of the Anglo-American bloc and a celebration of Muslim solidarity.
There we have it. Motive and plenty of it. Granted, entirely based on circumstantial evidence. But what only further increases suspicion is that his successor, Nazimuddin, is praised for his stolid loyalty to the British crown mere days after Khan's death.
So, the plot thickens yet again, and as so often pursuing one lead might have given us a new one. I wonder. Anglo-American bloc. Remember how Iran, MI6 and CIA worked together to bring down the government with a coup?
Oh, so you're saying Uncle Sam is involved as well? That does seem plausible. Let's investigate.
For the United States, foreign policy in Central and South Asia can be described in one word: containment. The goal is to build a wall of allies to stop the spread of communism, and Pakistan's geography, flanking Iran and close to the Soviet heartland, makes it a vital prize.
However, Washington found Liaquat Ali Khan to be a frustrating partner. When the US offers a paltry $10 million in 1948 instead of the $2 billion aid package Pakistan requested the year before, Khan responds by accepting an invitation to Moscow.
This rattles Washington, which instead invites him to the US in 1950, prompting him to postpone his visit to Moscow. But the visit is a bust, yielding only photo ops, not any concrete aid. Afterwards, an American diplomat warns.
Our present policy of procrastination and promises is not enough and is not winning the battle. Dire necessity on the part of Pakistan may force her to deal with other powers and drive her into an orbit of influence, namely the Soviet, that is prejudicial to our interests.
So, the US has a motive too. Prime Minister Khan was independent, unpredictable, and willing to use the Soviet Union as leverage. Crucially, his efforts to build a neutral Islamic bloc with Iran and Egypt directly clash with Washington plans.
For hardliners in Washington, a leader who can't be controlled is an obstacle to the grand strategy of containment. His death would conveniently solve a lot of problems, paving the way for a more pliable pro-American leader to take his place.
But I don't know, Sebastian. All of this is just very circumstantial. Maybe there is no grand conspiracy. What if it was just a lone fanatic taking advantage of the fragile political situation?
Wait, whoa, what did you just say?
You know, a lone fanatic?
No, after that.
His death comes at a very bad time for Pakistan. The government's support is fragile, with many doubters and detractors. Heck, there was even an attempted military coup in 1950. Oh, you mean to say?
Yes, what if the plot does not come from without, but within?
Yes, that does make some sense. Let's investigate. The domestic political atmosphere is toxic. In March 1951, just 7 months before the assassination, the government uncovers the Rawalpindi conspiracy, a planned military coup led by the popular war hero Major General Akbar Khan, allegedly with leftist support.
While Prime Minister Khan and the new army chief General Ayub Khan, I know 3 Khans, confusing, worked together to crush the plot and jail the conspirators, the event exposes a deep rot, a willingness within parts of the military to overthrow the state.
This is the backdrop for the main power struggle. While the PM is the face of the nation, a new establishment of senior military officers and bureaucrats, led by figures like Ayub Khan and the ambitious finance minister Ghulam Muhammad, is consolidating power behind the scenes.
They have a very different vision from Pakistan, at least from Prime Minister Khan. They see a future secured only by a full military alliance with the United States, which would bring the modern weapons they desperately want to counter India.
Prime Minister Khan, however, is an obstacle. As a result of years of disappointments, as we've mentioned already, he is exploring the independent Islamic bloc and is reluctant to commit to the Western camp. He stands in the way of the alliance, the weapons, and the power the upcomers crave.
And the evidence for a plot against him is chilling. Remember, the assassin was killed on the spot, silenced forever. More damningly, though, the official investigation file into the murder mysteriously disappears, a fact that directly points to a high-level cover-up.
But the final piece of evidence is what happens next. After Liaquat's death, who takes power? Ghulam Muhammad becomes the new head of state. Ayub Khan's influence skyrockets. And Pakistan's foreign policy pivots back sharply, just as they wanted, straight into a firm alliance with the United States.
I still don't know, though. One thing we haven't even looked at is how the varying potential conspirators also overlap in motive. Like, take Afghanistan. Afghanistan says to the US, support Pakistan on the border issue, the Durand Line, and we will be forced to turn to the Soviets.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, the resulting firm alliance with the Anglo-American bloc that follows the assassination, this serves Britain, the US, and the domestic forces simultaneously.
So, what's the verdict? Who orchestrated the assassination of Prime Minister Khan?
Well, the frustrating truth is that we will likely never know for certain. The real official investigation was a failure, with crucial information deliberately suppressed. As we've said already, there's simply no smoking gun, or at the very least, not one that is publicly known.
But we can weigh the evidence. It's very unlikely it was a simple act of revenge by Afghanistan or India. The assassin's profile as an intelligence asset for both Britain and Pakistan makes that too convenient, too easy.
Likewise, the evidence doesn't speak for a lone fanatic. The security failure that allowed a known asset under surveillance to get within meters of the Prime Minister was just too perfect.
This leaves two main suspects: the Western powers and the enemy within, or a combination of both. If you look at how Britain and the US were involved in orchestrating the coup in Iran, not even 2 months before, it certainly remains a real possibility.
However, while they had the motive, it was Pakistan's own establishment, the ambitious military and bureaucratic elite, who had the means.
Only they could control the security cordon that mysteriously failed. Only they could have managed the assassin who was on their own intelligence payroll. And only they could ensure the subsequent investigation was buried, the files lost, and the truth obscured forever.
So, while we cannot point to the specific person who gave the order, the most plausible verdict is this. The assassination of Pakistan's first prime minister was the result of a domestic conspiracy, and possibly on the behest of their Western allies.
It was a deadly convergence of interests that not only killed a man, but also changed the fate of a nation. Liaquat Ali Khan's death marked the end of Pakistan's nascent civilian-led democracy and the beginning of the rise of the military bureaucratic establishment, an institution that will come to dominate the country's politics for decades to come, stoking the fires of war in the process.
What this means is best explained by the words of Pakistan's Foreign Secretary Ikamullah. After all, what was the meaning of Liaquat's death? Only this, that others of us will be killed. Pakistan will have to fight.
If you've enjoyed our historical murder mystery and want to know what will happen next, stay tuned.
If you want to learn more about what exactly happens in Iran pretty much around the same time, check our video about it right here on the channel.
And if you want to join the cause of exploring the decade-spanning conflict that shaped today's world more than any other, then go to patreon.com or timeghost.tv and enlist.
Excelsior!